Fellas and ladies, a few weeks ago, we actually talked about perks in the game. What changed with them in terms of damage. This ranged from Kill Clip to Rampage, Swashbuckler, Surrounded, Desperado on Redrix, Breakneck with Onslaught. It was a pretty sad video for the most part. Today, though, is the counter to that video. These are actually weapons that grew stronger inside of Shadowkeep indirectly. Now, most of the weapons that are going to be mentioned on this list, yes, are exotics. Yes, they are substantially more powerful than their counterparts, and they contain something unique to them that makes them a bit better. Now, whether or not you want to use these exotics, it's completely up to you. But mathematically, for the most part, these weapons, yeah, they're pretty good. So let's get started. First up on this list, we have Bad Juju. Bad Juju comes with the perk String of Curses. Actually a pretty nice perk there that actually buffs our damage and refills our magazine on kill, and it gives us super energy. Also, it fires in full auto. All around, a very well-rounded weapon. In pre-Shadowkeep, many of us said that this was a fantastic weapon, but considering all the nerfs that were handed out to perks against its legendary counterparts, Bad Juju has risen to the top. You see, String of Curses buffs our damage by 20% at 1 stack, 40% at 2, 60% at 3, 80% at 4, and 100% at 5. This is, of course, in PvE. That is a substantial buff. And in comparison to all our other perks, Kill Clip, Rampage, Multi-Kill Clip, Surrounded, String of Curses here is doing double the damage, if not more than double the damage, when compared to all those other weapons. And even though I would rather have like buffs handed out to weapons rather than everything else getting slashed and nerfed, regardless, the result is clear. Bad Juju is a phenomenal primary inside of Shadowkeep. And inside of PvP, you get those same benefits from String of Curses, starting at 12% at the first stack, 20% at 2 stacks, 32% at 3, 40% at 4, and capping out at 52% more damage at times 5. And if you got the Exotic Catalyst, that allows you to keep that String of Curses perk for 1 more second longer. All around, guys, Bad Juju is a wonderful option in this sandbox. Now, moving on, we've got Izanagi's Burden. Not a surprise. You've seen him around in raid teams, especially in the most recent raid. Izanagi's is my go-to sniper for damage phases. Now, I know it's currently bugged for people that didn't have it before Shadowkeep, and I am so sorry about that. I know me taunting it right now in front of your face is not making life for you better. Hopefully, Bungie will get around to fixing it. But it comes with the intrinsic perk Honed Edge. Holding reload consumes the magazine and loads a round with additional range and damage. And if you have the Exotic Catalyst, that also increases the damage bonus of Honed Edge when 4 more bullets are consumed. Now, when we look at damage values at Greg, Izanagi initially hits 19,486 damage per crit. That grows by a whopping 90% at times 2 to 36,974. And again, that's only times 2. And at times 3, it goes up to 43,766. And at times 4, it jumps up substantially to 86,284 damage. That is a 343% increase from its original damage. Izanagi's was potent even before Shadowkeep launch. But with the changes, though, that was handed out to Lunafaction boots and Rally Barricades, where those things would no longer auto-reload your weapons, but instead increase reload speed, actually benefited Izanagi's even more, as it allowed us to actually activate Honed Edge times 4 even faster, which is why you saw so many people, even on day 1 raids, using this exotic. It's pretty much stayed in my loadout since then too. Every time I'm either doing the raid or 980 Nightfalls, Izanagi is there with me. Now, what's so surprising is the PvP buff that it got as well. And yes, this is an indirect buff. We tested the damage values today, and shout out to Dimitri for jumping in here. But inside of PvP, Izanagi hits 218 per crit on supers. As you know, damage resistance overall for all of our supers got adjusted inside of Shadowkeep. Now, what was so interesting was that pre-Shadowkeep, Honed Edge times 4, even with the Exotic Catalyst, could not one-shot body shot a super. You'd hit like 150 something. It was pretty sad. I was very much bummed out about this. But with the adjustments to our damage resistance, Honed Edge times 4 with the Exotic Catalyst, yes, can one-shot body supers inside of Crucible. So in the bold right there is all our different damage resistance that we have for all of our various supers. 49% you hit 201 per body at Honed Edge times 4, 51% you hit 193, 52% you hit 189, 53% you hit 185, and 54.4% you hit 180. Now this means that these supers right here, even max resilience guardians, can be shut down with Honed Edge times 4 4, and the exotic catalyst. That's Nova Warp, Thunder Crash, Blade Barrage, Nova Bomb, Well of Radiance, Golden Gun, of course, because you don't get anything with Golden Gun. You have 0% damage resistance, and Chaos Reach, which actually has the second lowest at 40%. Now, for Guardians that are rocking 6 resilience or less, Hammer of Soul, Daybreak, those supers can also be shut down with Honed Edge ×4. And for Guardians that are rocking 3 resilience or less with Spectral Blades, but is visible, can also be shut down with Honed Edge ×4. Now, the supers that cannot be shut down is Fist of Havoc, Burning Maul, Sentinel Shield, Arc Staff, Arc Lightning, Shadow Shot, and Spectral Blades when it's invisible. Regardless though, if you happen to have enough ammo in reserves, and you got a guy that just popped a super in front of you, you might as well just proc Honed Edge ×4. Even if you don't get the kill, and they happen to be rocking a super that has 52% or higher, you're still gonna get them to one shot. So somebody's gonna clean them up, whether that's you or your teammate. So yes, guys, Izanagi's Burden, it's a fantastic sniper for PvE, but is also more lethal inside of PvP. And even though these buffs are indirect buffs, they are noticeable buffs. Now, moving on, the next weapon that we want to look at that got indirectly buffed, but also directly buffed, is of course Huckleberry. We made a video a few weeks ago. We talked about it being the best SMG in the game. Now, it may not be the best SMG. Quite frankly, Recluse is still very much dominant. Teraba is also a very good option, but both Teraba and Huckleberry got a direct buff of 10% inside of our current sandbox. But Huckleberry especially is standing out above other SMGs simply because of its Rampage perk, as it still gets the buff of 20%, 41%, and 66% inside of PvE. That's at stacks of 1, 2, and 3. And as you know, Rampage on all of our other weapons only goes up by 10% at 1 stack, 21% at 2 stacks, and 33% at 3 stacks. Huckleberry is substantially doing more damage than its counterparts simply because its Rampage perk was not touched, alongside that 10% buff that it got directly. So if you want to keep hugging the nuts of your Recluse, by all means, hug away. But if you want to pick up a weapon that will enhance your sex appeal overnight, Huckleberry will never let you down. It's like Huckleberry and Chaperone. Both of those weapons are the love-making weapons of D2. And even though I'm going to have a million comments talking about how Recluse is still the better SMG than Huckleberry, I don't care. I like Huckleberry more. I know we're messing around a bunch here, guys, but seriously, Huckleberry is a very good SMG. Just try it out. Moving on to the next weapon that was indirectly buffed in actually a lot of ways is, of course, Thorn. Yeah, Thorn is doing pretty phenomenal. Now, already, I liked Thorn even before Shadowkeep launch. It was one of my favorite hand cannons. It came with the perk Mark of the Devourer, which states that rounds pierce targets and deal damage over time. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants, and upon picking up those remnants, you activate the perk Soul Devour. Now, this perk strengthens Mark of the Devourer, and it partially refills the magazine. Now, inside of PvP, it actually allows Thorn here to be a 2-tapper. Once you proc something like Soul Devour, our poison damage here is doing 7 damage per tick at 4 ticks. Now, it doesn't necessarily speed up the TTK value, but it allows you to peek, get 2 shots off on an enemy, and then peek back into cover, allowing you to kill Guardians that are 5 resilience or less. Now, there's actually 2 major benefits to that damage over time. Number 1, that lingering damage keeps your opponent from recovering. I know it's like only an extra second or 2, but it makes a huge difference in 1v1 duels. Another beautiful thing about it is that in this current sandbox, with all the range nerfs that's been handed out to hand cannons, Thorn, with its ability to tack on this extra damage, even at great ranges, allows it to still be somewhat of a contender at all times. Now, that's not to say to go out there in the middle of Widow's Court at 40-50 meters and try to outduel a Jade Rabbit. Obviously, you're gonna lose. The main thing is in team engagements, Thorn is such an excellent weapon. Now, all of these things sound great for Thorn, and normally Thorn has been looked at as a PvP weapon only. But I'm here to show you that this weapon is very much a PvE weapon as well. Now, when we compare it to my God Roll Spare Rations here, that also comes with Rampage. Spare Rations is doing 2,696 damage per crit, and at 1 stack of Rampage, it jumps up to 2,965. At 2 stacks, it jumps up to 3,262. And at 3 stacks, it jumps up to 3,588. Now, Thorn does 2,123 damage per crit, but it also does 253 damage per tick at 4 ticks. And that damage increases to 757 damage per tick when Soul Devour is activated. So when comparing these 2 weapons together, Thorn by itself is doing 16% more damage than Spare Rations. But Thorn with Soul Devour is doing 44% 20% more damage than spare rations, even at ×3 rampage. And on top of that, guys, the weapon reloads a few rounds every time you absorb a remnant, and the duration there of Soul Devour is super long. So the point is, I know we always look at Thorn as being a PvP weapon only, but it is an excellent PvE choice, and maybe not so before Shadowkeep launch, but now especially, considering that it's doing 44% more damage than its legendary counterparts, even when they have something like ×3 rampage fully procced. Thorn is definitely an option inside of PvE. Now moving on, next is an LMG that I know many of you probably threw up trying to get, and that is 21% Delirium. Yes guys, 21% Delirium also indirectly got a buff inside of Shadowkeep, simply because it did not receive the same nerfs that our other perks received. First up, 21% Delirium, guys, this is the Gambit Pinnacle weapon from Season of the Drifter. It's actually one of the best LMGs in the game. It's Pinnacle for a reason. It's in the rapid fire archetype, so it has deeper ammo reserves and a slightly faster reload when the magazine is empty. It also comes with extended mag for another bump there in magazine size, but the trait Overflow actually allows the weapon to reload beyond normal capacity. We're talking like 200 plus rounds here in this LMG. But the final trait is the trait that avoided the nerfs altogether, and that is of course Killing Tally. Kills increases weapons damage until it is stowed or reloaded. And of course, if you happen to be rocking 21% Delirium with some armament mods, yeah, you're golden. You'll pretty much always have ammo, and pretty much indefinitely keep something like Killing Tally ×3 always procced. Now the damage increases inside of PvE is actually pretty nice. It goes up 21.67%, 43.25%, and caps out at 64.92%. That is, of course, at Killing Tally ×3. Now, inside of PvP, it's not nearly that noticeable. It's 4% at 1 stack, 8% at 2 stacks, and 12.5% at 3. It's still a very good LMG inside of PvP, but if they were to allow the same ratio of buff inside of PvE to transition inside of PvP, my God, I think everybody would use 21% Delirium. Hands down, though, where it is now, it's one of the best options in PvE. It's a legendary weapon, it frees up that exotic slot, and it's one of my favorite weapons to rock alongside with Izanagi's Burden. And I think it's one of the best ad clearing LMGs in the game, even better than its exotic counterparts. Now moving on, our next weapon up that got an indirect buff is of course Whisper of the Worm. Yeah, I know, man, I'm so happy to see it back. I remember everybody was super pissed when it got nerfed, and it got nerfed like 2 or 3 times. It comes with the exotic perk White Nail. Higher base precision damage and rapidly landing 3 precision hits will refill the magazine. Now previously you used to refill the magazine out of thin air. You can indefinitely regenerate ammo. Bungie of course fixed that. They said it was too overpowered, which in the previous sandbox kind of killed this weapon overnight. But in this sandbox, in a world where Lunafaction boots and Rally Barricade does not auto reload our weapons, Whisper here has a place. It allows us to go into damage phases where we really have a very small window to get a lot of damage in, and we don't need to waste any time reloading. And as you can see here, Whisper is perfect for this encounter, as this guy is moving away from us, so we can't necessarily sit in a well of radiance or behind a Rally Barricade, as we're kind of like having to move with it as well. And I don't know if Bungie did this intentionally to give value to something like Whisper, but it's definitely valuable in this sandbox for pretty much all encounters, just simply because it can auto reload. Now the damage values on someone like Greg, we're hitting 25,742 damage per crit. And if you happen to have the exotic catalyst for Whisper, and I highly suggest that you get it, you obtain the trait Whisper Breathing. This actually increases our precision damage by 35%, increasing our damage here at Greg to 34,710 damage. And as you can see there, that perk Whisper Breathing pretty much lasts indefinitely until of course you miss a shot. So Whisper, guys, I know it's kind of like fell in and out of the meta a bunch. It's definitely back, definitely an option. Now moving on to our next weapon on the list that got an indirect buff as well is Merciless. Yeah, dude, nobody uses this thing. Now it actually comes with the perk Conserve Momentum. Non-lethal hits with the projectiles makes this weapon charge faster until its wielder gets a kill. A pretty cool perk there. I don't really want to go into this thing too detailed, as I actually want to individually review this one here soon, but one of the more standout things about this weapon, other than its rate of fire getting substantially increased with every non-lethal shot, is the perk Impetus. reloading immediately after a kill increases weapon damage for a short duration. Now, that damage actually increases by 50% and lasts for about 5 seconds there. So for 5 seconds after getting a kill and reloading and proccing impetus, you can now proc this damage buff almost through an entire magazine of conserve momentum. And like we said, just comparing its perk, impetus to kill clip now inside of Shadowkeep Sandbox, kill clip only gives us a buff of 33% in Shadowkeep. So people that are rocking things like Arantil or other fusion rifles with kill clip, just know your man Merciless here could be carrying you. And if you happen to have the exotic catalyst, hell, that's even better. Now, last but not least on this list, we have the exotic hand cannon Sunshot. Sunshot, guys, yes, it did get a direct buff from 8 rounds to 12, which I know some people think that's not a major buff. That is a huge buff. Can't tell you how many times having those extra 4 rounds has saved my life. But inside of PvP, with all the range hand cannon nerfs that were handed out, Sunshot with its explosive rounds allows it to still remain a contender even at that mid-range. Now, again, similar situation to Thorn. Don't stand in the middle of eternity and try to walk down a scout rifle or a sniper. But also, like Thorn, having that little bit of explosive damage that you can do with each shot allows you to contribute to those team engagements. And not only that, if you're looking for a weapon that has like some of the best explosions you have ever seen, my lord, look no further. So guys, that is all of the weapons that I can think of that got indirectly buffed. Now I know there's going to be a lot of weapons people are going to throw at me that got buffed that are doing better. Listen, these are just weapons that have stood out to me the most. Only a handful of these that were mentioned on today's list are actually being used, which is kind of sad. To me, all of these weapons though are major contenders in this sandbox. So try them out for yourselves. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.